Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio Success Express Business and Career Show. So every fourth Wednesday we get to chat with Ward Heinrichs. Ward is a San Diego employment attorney. He has been on our show for I don't know how many years, but quite a while to know how, we need some structure in our brains. Let's put it that way, right, Ward?
That's what I try to provide, a little structure for Big Blend.
And yes, because all that fine print and all that good stuff. But no, you really help a lot of people explaining laws, the new laws, hey, don't fall down that loophole. Don't, all of that good stuff, whether it's businesses and employees and everyone. Ward's website is bestemploymentattorneysandiego.com. See, I never have to look that up in the notes.
Right
see?
on. I love it.
I know. So today, we are kicking off a series of programming for Military Appreciation Month and also over Memorial Day. And then we're going to also be refeaturing all of this coming Veterans Weekend, Veterans Day coming up in November. But Ward, I know you served in the Marine Corps, and we've talked about that before on the shows. And every chance we get, we want to say thank you for your service. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And you did a lot. I mean, this is something that you give of your country. It's something where, hey, I'm going to go into this, and once you're in there, you can't get out.
Well,
unless you break the law, then you have
ways of getting out of the Marine Corps if you want to.
Yeah, but let's go to this, because today we're going to talk about your career in the Marine Corps and how it affects your career as an employment attorney and as an attorney. Because, like I was saying about structure and understanding the devil in the details, right? There's focus that goes into that, and you've got an article, and everyone is linked in the show notes. And it's also up on BlendRadioandTV.com talking about, hey, understanding communication. And I suppose you have to do a lot of listening when you're in the Marines, right? Or anybody in the armed forces.
Well, that's part of leadership. You really, at least the way I view it, you really have to listen first and talk second. And that doesn't mean you can't come out and say, hey, this is what we got to do today. That's different. But when you say something like that and someone comes up to you and they say, well, I'm not sure what you mean. Did you think about it this way? And then you really just got to hear what they have to say. And then it gets even deeper than that about personal issues, because in the Marine Corps, you're more like a big family.
Okay.
At least when I was in, the guy, it was all mostly male, very few females, were living on base, and they lived in not squad bays anymore. That's where all the bunks were in the same place, but they had individual rooms with 3 or 4 Marines in them. So it's a tight. You live in tight quarters, and so all that personal stuff also gets talked about, and you've got to listen to that, because you got these issues you got to address, personal issues.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, because it's a bunch of strangers.
Yeah.
When you first go in,
connect, you're strangers.
Yeah, a lot of truth to that, except you have the Marine Corps to unite everyone. You always have that going for you, and that unifying theme of the Marine Corps.
Oh, so keeps you going back. So if anybody gets in an argument, you're not really allowed to go that far with it, because you need to get back to the core.
Well, I saw some personal battles going on, and it's, you got to let people work their things out, but at some point it might get bad enough to happen. And that's just part of it. I mean, everyone lives close together, and you got those issues, and the family needs to stay happy. So in my case, it was a captain who was in charge of our company. That's what it's generally known as if you're an 03, which is the ground pounders, the guys who carry the guns and actually do the direct combat. So at company level, it was a captain usually, and they had to keep order in the house. And if there's personal issues coming up and making the foundation shake a little bit, they had to be addressed. That's just that's part of it.
Mm.
Mm.
So what led you to going and serving in the Marine Corps?
Oh, that's an interesting story. At least I think it's interesting. I was in a fraternity, and a couple of my buddies, one of them is super intense, super great guy, but super intense. And, he always had to be doing something. And he said, you know what? I'm going to join the Marine Corps. And we go, "Eh?" And he goes, yeah. And I want you guys to join too. And so we all started talking about this, and we said, okay, we'll do this program. The program, it was called the Platoon Leaders Course back then. And
Mm.
you could do it during summers in college. And if you didn't want to join the Marine Corps, you didn't have to after the summer course. So it was, you could just kind of test it out. So we all did that, and every one of us joined up.
Wow.
We
You
got our
got in?
commissions.
So is this while you were in college for law, or were you in college in general at that
Oh,
point?
No, it was undergrad.
Okay.
And I did want to make clear that you said my Marine Corps career. Well, I didn't make it a career. I had 4 years, and then I went to law school after that.
Okay.
And so, people who are in the military kind of understand the term careers a little differently, probably, as someone who, did at least 20 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a you do your service, and then there's also those who are that's a military career, like a general, like we talk about
That's
General
where you
Helmore all the
just
time.
don't
That's a
come
career
out.
like 20, 30 years and leading battles and
Mm.
troops. That's kind of the career part. This is service. So this all started from college. How many beers did you have when you all had this idea of doing this?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I don't even, we probably were drinking a few beers, but I don't remember the specifics.
I'm just
Do you
saying, was this
think,
a keg party when somebody stood up on the keg and said, "Come on, man, we're doing this"?
yeah, but when you
Yeah,
watch,
hard.
okay, if you haven't been in the service, then you are watching movies, television, and sitcoms like MASH. So how close to have you seen MASH?
Have I seen MASH? Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's a great
Okay.
show.
So
I'm gonna
I
take
know.
off
So
my glasses. I'm tired of
yeah.
these.
Okay. So how close is it to the military? I mean that
that's
was a
in the
Korean
war.
war, but
Yeah.
I mean the way the people acted, because they're
Well,
kind of a family.
okay. The family aspect I agree with,
Mm,
especially in combat, because
mm,
you're you've just got to deal with what combat throws at you when you're there. And I was never in combat,
mm,
but you talk about being close with people, because I've talked
mm,
to Marines who had been in combat back then. When I was in, it was Vietnam War usually,
mm,
and you just got tight with the people because you're in the same foxhole, and
yeah.
you're
Mm.
and very often you're taking live fire. MASH is different,
Mm,
but still,
mm,
because it was medical unit, but
mm,
you still would have deep connections to the people you work with, because you were with them 24 hours a day.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you had this mission that you had to accomplish. I want to save as many of these guys as I can. I want to make them as whole as possible. I want to stop the bleeding. So yeah, that part's true. Now, of course, Alden Alda took great liberty with how things
Yeah.
really happened, but
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
So when
it was based on truth.
yeah,
Mm,
I think that and the shenanigans, because doesn't humor play into
oh
you
yeah.
Oh
have
yeah.
to have some humor.
Oh,
Has to
absolutely. One
Mm,
of the things we commonly said was hurry up and wait, because you always
yeah.
said,
mm,
your leader was going, the captain, whoever, we got to be here at 6 o'clock, or dark 30, however he wants to say it. And we're going to be ready. And then we're just going to get on that plane. We're going to fly over to the big island, and you're there at 5:30, and then nothing happens for 3 hours because the jets aren't ready, or, whatever it is, whatever's going on. So hurry
yeah.
up and wait was a common theme. And there's also just other, military is a large unit of the government. And
Mhm.
it, when you're taking care of so many people, it's just hard to get that whole mass moving in unison. And so
Mhm.
there's this stopping and bunching, and, it's just the way it is. I think the military is pretty good at it. I mean, how many millennia have we had military to fine tune how it runs? But still, there's a lot of, because it's a bunch of people, a lot
Yeah,
of,
it's people.
looking at each other and just kind of laughing at the situation because what can we do now?
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. I think it's fascinating to me about everyone having to come together from different backgrounds, but you have this
Mhm.
common goal. Some people say, you know what, this can be my career. Others like I'm going to do my service, but then you're going to use something from there. Like even talking about
Well,
humor.
what you learn.
I mean, even as a lawyer, you see people in situations that they've got themselves into, or not necessarily, not always their fault, right? So it's not always that they put themselves in the situation, or you know what I mean, vice versa. Somebody's a victim, someone's not. I mean, you're seeing all these scenarios. At some point you do have to have some like levity to get through it. We know a lot of people who are therapists. I mean, even people who work in mortuaries and things like that. When you see a lot of some of the hardcore stuff, you have to be able to breathe through it. So how do you handle that part of knowing someone's really gone through maybe harassment at work, I know you deal with sexual harassment cases, something that extreme. How do you get through that to kind of keep emotions in place throughout? Because your client has to somehow do that too, right?
Yeah, well, it's more important for them than me because they've actually experienced it. But
Mhm.
I think more I have to be delicate in that kind of situation and understanding. Um, and honestly, there's not a ton of humor that goes on in law. I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of lawyers are funny.
but we do make
Mhm.
Hang out
jokes
with
about you all, right? That's the other side.
there's jokes about lawyers, and lawyers are
Mhm.
often very funny. Quick on the
Mm.
comebacks and things like that. But with a client, they got a serious issue. Now, some issues are more serious than others. But no matter what, there's no one saying, "Hey, tell me a joke, Ward." A new client. They
Yeah.
want to
Yeah,
know what I think about their
they're
situation, whether it helps.
serious.
So yeah,
Mhm.
it's more of a serious thing, but um, you have to maintain a good and positive attitude. I think it's important not
Mhm.
only for a lawyer to do that and the client as well as much as possible, because honestly, you're going to get through it one way or the other. We're going to get to the other side of this, and I'm going to try to make the situation as best as I possibly can. But 2 years from now, you're going to be able to sleep peacefully, and so
Mm.
you really need to keep that kind of mindset going, I think, to
Mm.
get through some of these hard times. But I don't want to make light of it. Some of these situations are hard.
Yeah,
Mhm. And
for
people
sure.
losing, could lose a business over something that, or because I know you also represent a lot of businesses mostly.
Yeah,
But
I do.
going
Mhm.
I
through
was gonna
these
say about 80%
situations.
of my time I spend with businesses now.
Mhm.
And a lawsuit hits them or a threatened lawsuit, and they're starting to think, do I have to declare bankruptcy? With
Mm.
smaller employers, especially when the damages start mounting up, you're going,
Uh-oh.
they're
Oh.
thinking this could be really bad for me. And so,
And it could
Mhm.
take down a whole family too,
oh
you
yeah,
know?
absolutely, it could. Usually, there's ways of working around that and making things work so that businesses stay intact. But it does take some diplomacy and negotiation um, and honesty. You got to be honest with each other and honest with the person across the side, that you're negotiating with. You got to say, hey, we got this problem. We need to take care of it, or no one's going to win here. Everyone loses. So yes, even during
Mm.
those times, though, I think you're well served if you can keep as positive a light in your mind as you possibly can.
So did you
Yes.
think that kind of
Mhm.
understanding comes from your service in the military and your training to get to the other side?
Well, I think it reinforced it. I think that
Mm.
I think in general we all are kind of tend
Well,
toward
you're a
that. Now, some
positive.
people are
You're
more
always
negative.
positive.
Yeah, you're
I
You're
always
always
am
positive.
positive.
Ward's
You know what?
funny.
All
He
right.
is
Because
funny, and he does have a sense of humor. So there you go. He does. You should hear him on our radio plays if you haven't already.
so we have insurances, different kinds of insurance policies for a whole lot of things, for car
Mhm,
accidents and
mhm.
slip and fall, or I cause myself to slip and fall. So companies have insurance against some of these kind of actions, or like when I was working for one company, I had a case where a lady took a banana on the bus and she ate the banana, but she kept the peel. And as she was going down the steps off the bus, she put the banana peel on she just tossed it to lower step. And somehow she managed to slip and fall.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I know, so she sued the bus company in Los Angeles
Oh, it's like the hot coffee in
for the
McDonald's.
slip and fall. So then when I got it and I was having to check out all the angles and find the people who were on the bus, see if there was a witness. Mostly the most important person was the driver. And all he kept saying is, ma'am, I'm looking at the traffic. And I'm like, well, the door's open and she's coming down the steps. You're not moving. Did you not, you know? But there was one lady on the bus who did see that the lady had that she brought the banana on the bus. And it turned into this big deal about, well,
He's the
this lady
banana eater.
brought, yeah, she's the only, you had to prove she's the only person who had a banana on the bus. And
But-
that the banana peeling wasn't there when people got on the bus. It was only there when they exited. And so I had to go find all these witnesses that were on the bus who got off right before her. Was there banana peeling? So it was an interesting thing. I learned a lot from it. And at the end of the day, she did lose the lawsuit because we did find one person who said they watched and she did it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So that was really fun. I mean, it's not a nice thing, but it was fun investigating it and finding the answers and questioning all the people. Of course, I'm working now for an insurance company when I'm doing this.
Yeah,
And
that's what it sounds like.
yeah,
but
yeah.
do you have to do
so-
that with interviewing people and with all the witnesses and all of that?
Yeah. I don't do as much in-person interviewing as I used to. Back in the day, I used to do criminal law, and I would actually go find witnesses and talk to them, and that can really pay great benefits because not even the police will necessarily find these witnesses and talk to them. Now, mostly over the phone, but I do talk to witnesses, and at the very least, the client and the opposing side usually. And you try to piece together what happened as best you can. And in my line of work, there's usually documents that are required, and so there are documents that show a lot of these violations, whether they are or aren't, whether they did happen or didn't happen. But it's all investigation. I always start with documents now, almost always, and then end up talking to people. But yeah, you try to find the story, and then you try to find the story that's best for your client.
Yeah,
So investigation. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say there was these little cards that this insurance company I work for gave me that I had to fill out, and they sent a carbon copy to somewhere, and I'm not really sure where. And it came back with a list of how many times she had done this. So
Okay.
yeah, she did it 6 times.
Well, that's
And
not a good fact.
and
for
they
her.
called it a bodily injury index card. And I'm not sure what agency it all got sent into, but every time there was a claim, you had to fill one out, and you kept the one card for your file, and the other carbon copy would go wherever the insurance company sent it, and then you get a report back. And so sometimes it was pretty astounding, but she stuck in my mind because I couldn't believe she got away with it 6 times.
6
Well,
times.
5.
But that,
But 6 times she
going
didn't.
back to the
It's interesting.
the theme of the show with Ward having to understand people. That's
Yeah.
part of that, right? Is understanding, like, if you had met the banana woman, would you go, okay, like my gut instinct from all these experiences of being real close to people and having to go through all of this, over these 4 years with them and the training and even college, right? I think college also sets you up to understand people. Would
Sure.
you think you would have gone, you know what? She's the banana peel lady. She did it.
Well,
Do you think?
as you get older and practice for a longer period of time, you do have more questions. At least I do. I go, this story, not so sure about it. Let me ask a few more questions and try to flush this out. and sometimes it leads into, well, tell me, the people who actually saw this, I need to talk to them. Or just you just kind of know how to question and get a feel, get off the story that's memorized and get on to what maybe
The
really
nitty
happened.
gritty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are times definitely when that happens, and you do have to have kind of a sense, and I think you build that sense over time because you've seen so many things. I've seen something like this before. This doesn't sound quite right. They should have this kind of evidence, and they don't. That's weird. So let's see if some. And that doesn't mean it's always wrong necessarily. Maybe they just they didn't collect the right kind of evidence. But it's a red flag, and so you need to check into that red flag.
So what did you do in the military? What was your main duty over the 4 years?
Well, I was an artillery officer. So essentially in the Marines, you spend a half a year in the basic school, and that's 6 months of training, mostly infantry training. And just having that common background that all Marine officers have. And then I went to Fort Sill because I was an artillery officer and spent, gosh, I forget how long that one was, but I think it was more than 6 months. I think it was like 8 months long, doing, learning about artillery. So then you go out to the fleet, and then that's when you actually start being a Marine leader, a junior officer. Very junior, butter bar, and sometimes you get made fun of for being a butter bar. That means
what the what?
Butter bar, second lieutenant.
That's butter bar.
Butter
you were
bar.
A butter bar?
Yeah.
That sounds like a candy
All right, so
bar.
But you have insignia on your collar that shows the rank you are. And if you're a lieutenant, you have 1 bar. Captain has 2 bars, and then it gets different depending on where you go. Oak leaves, and anyway, I won't get into all that. But the first bar is gold, and then when you're a first lieutenant, you have a silver bar. And no one ever calls them silver bars. It's always butter bar because it's kind of you're making fun of it. It's sort of saying you don't know anything. You just got here. You haven't figured it out yet.
Needs a newbie.
Yeah.
But you're a butter bar when you first start out, and
that's funny.
Yeah, and so you try to, it's a lot of on-the-job training. Sometimes you go to some extra schools, but you learn what it takes to lead Marines.
And so doing that, so you had to learn all the ammunitions, like all the different guns and stuff like that?
Well, artillery, yeah. Artillery is, the howitzers, and so they're the big guns, and there's a few different ones that we learned on. Let's see, there was the 105 millimeters, and the 155 that's again millimeters, but that's a bigger projectile. Then there's the 8-inch gun, so that was like a gigantic, but we never had those in the Marine Corps. When I got out there, we started with the smaller ones, the 105s, and then we later, pretty quickly after I got there, got the 155s and 155 millimeters.
When you were doing that in service, did they teach you like battle history, or was it all about moving forward now?
No, there wasn't any direct historical learning.
Because you were in Hawaii for a lot of this, right?
But commonly the lieutenants would read historical works to learn more about combat and certain aspects of combat. So that was common. So that was mostly self-taught. In the basic school, they did teach us quite a bit of Marine Corps history.
Okay. But what about strategy?
In terms of historical knowledge, about how battles were fought, that was mostly something you did on your own.
Oh, so battle strategy, because that's what I was thinking about when we first discussed, this as a topic was, well, gosh, there's got to be strategy involved in this. Like, I mean, do you, like, if you're closing a case, do you just walk in and wing it with a speech, or do you have a strategy?
No.
Right.
There's no winging it. You have a strategy. So I was wondering about that with
I see what you're saying.
Training.
They train you. Part of your training and part of what you do when you're out in the fleet is putting together battle plans and executing them. And so that's a big part of it. So I didn't understand what you're saying. It's really not, you don't study historical cases so much, but they teach you how to effectively enter into combat and run the unit you're with, because there's infantry, and that's different. Artillery is different. You're behind the lines a little bit and you lob in shells on, on enemy targets. But then you have to pick everything up, when things get hot and crazy, maybe you have to pick up and move to a different spot so you can shoot from a different angle. Maybe you're winning, the infantry is advancing, and you need to move again so you can get closer to the opposing side's lines and be able to again lob artillery onto the enemy. So yeah, there's all that type of strategy. Sure, they taught.
I just did an interview, and it'll be airing on the Saturday after your show. Craig Nelson is a World War II, award-winning, best-selling writer, and he did a book on Roosevelt, and not Roosevelt, FDR, and V is for Victory is his book, and talks about what FDR did in World War II, and we were talking about strategies and stuff. And he said, through his research, he was talking to some big general dude. Yeah, I don't know all those terms, and not dude is not the word. Sorry. And he said, because we always talk, it's about the strategy. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And he said, the guy just said, no, when it comes down to it at war, you can have all the strategy you want. It's about logistics, period. What you need right there, right now. And that is that when you're in the heart of the battle. You get over the strategy. It is what you need now. And when you say you need it now, you need it now. And that was what
I have to say that makes a lot of now. I never faced a situation like that. Again, I wasn't in combat. And so we had all we needed when we're practicing this. So we didn't have that logistical problem, but that's a huge problem because I have read war histories. You get ahead of your logistics lines, and then you got to stop because you don't have the stuff, you don't have the ammunition, you don't have the food, you don't have all that stuff. And that, that would run a war. And there's all sorts of accounts about invading Russia. And how it's just so big that your logistical lines, maybe today we could get away with it, but I'm not even sure you could. Your logistical lines would not be able to keep up with your military lines, and there's no way that you could get food there quick enough, food and ammunition, and all that stuff, to keep your army going to get to Moscow. It's just the distance was so vast; it's really hard to do.
Oh wow! So it's kind of like
logistics.
So when it comes down to a case, when you're maybe going to court was a case, you can't, it's almost like you could have all the strategy in your world, but what's happening with the jury, what's happening with, your client, what's happening with the other lawyer that you're, against, if they change something up right there and then that you didn't know about, like, they brought in some new evidence suddenly, like sneak attack. Now, if they do we call it sneak attack. If they do a sneak attack, you need to abandon strategy, right? And go right to logistics right there and then on the courtroom floor, right? You have to go like, that's it. Or do you say to the judge, stop it all, I want to go to take me to the chambers, or is that movies?
Well, no, you can do that. You can ask for a sidebar and say, Your Honor, this is an issue. Now, you say surprises. Mostly in trial, you don't have major surprises because you've had the discovery process. And the idea behind the civil discovery process is to inform both sides as much as possible about the case, because then you can make better decisions about the case. Maybe you don't want to go to trial knowing what you know now. So usually stuff, you're not surprised flat-footed. Maybe there's a small thing that you didn't know. Maybe there's questioning that you didn't ask during your deposition. Now it's coming up and you go, boy, I should have asked that. But other than something like that, usually it's not a major surprise. But you are allowed, if something like that were to happen, and especially if it's new evidence, but wait, Your Honor, I asked for this type of evidence. When they gave me the evidence I asked for, I didn't see this that they're trying to pull now. So, Your Honor, this should be disallowed, something like that. So that can happen, sure. I have to say, though, I haven't seen that in any trial I've ever done where there was just evidence that came, they try to get some evidence in that was just off the wall and you didn't know about.
That's more crime. But I mean, employment law, I mean, isn't it just, you're really having to get everything prepared before as much as you can ahead of time. So those kind of surprises. It's like get all the groundwork and cover all your bases, which is something that in military strategy too, is cover your bases. No, it's like going out and not cover your bases is like, you better wear the right size pants. You know, just,
Right.
Okay.
you don't
Well,
want the
Sun
butt
Tzu
cheeky
said
hanging
that.
out,
Sun Tzu said that the battle's decided before the war even starts, and I'm misquoting it, but
Oh,
basically,
yeah.
if you're a good military strategist, you've won before you've started.
How
You've
important
figured
is
it out.
emotional
Well, I think
intelligence?
that's
Emotional
Winston
intelligence.
Oh, I
Churchill
think it's
kind
really
of
important
stuff.
because you're working with people, witnesses especially. I'm thinking of, and you really have to either get a rapport with a witness and work
Mhm.
that in, or you're getting a feeling, oh, this person isn't really telling the truth. Maybe I can catch them in this lie, and that'll help my case. So you got to be able to read people. You definitely on direct examination, even though you've practiced it a bunch, usually you want to throw the question out, let them respond, and then take how they've responded and build your next question on that. Usually you're
Wow.
doing
So
it like that.
how
So it doesn't
good are you
sound
at
rote.
poker then? That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. How good are you at poker? It
I'm
sounds
pretty
like
good.
you're going to be a hell of a good poker player
Last
because you
couple
get,
times I've
Well,
won. Yeah.
don't put all
yeah,
your cards out at once.
but you
Right?
can lead a person one question after another because they're concentrating on only answering one question at a time. They don't know what you're going to ask next. So you can kind of lead them right where you want them to
Now
a point.
are you talking about direct examination where it's your friendly witness, or are you talking about cross-examination?
The cross
Cross
examination.
examination, friendly witness. Sometimes people forget important details. Sometimes they don't want to talk about certain things, but you need them to for the sake of the case.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Listen, she
so
caught
there
me
are
in everything when I was a kid. So can you hear how this happened?
yes.
Growing up
So
as a teenager, she
Oh,
caught
yeah, I
me in
missed
but
that.
everything. Yeah,
it's
she
a
would ask questions and I'd
well-formed
find myself
question.
webbed up. Yep.
You just keep asking till the truth comes out
She
because
leads you into the
if you
spider
already
web.
know, you just it's a process.
Manipulation.
There's a process, but there's a
it's
limit to that process too. You can't
Yeah.
just keep asking the same question, and maybe you
No,
can
you have to,
rephrase it in ways. But at some
but
point, if you're not getting the answer you want, the judge is going to
Yeah.
say, move
that's
on.
enough.
And
Yeah.
you know what? The jury wants you to move on by that time too.
Yeah.
They've
But I
heard
don't
you
mean,
struggle and they don't want to hear anymore.
I don't want to,
Oh,
I'm not saying ask the same question. I'm saying have a string of questions because you're already guessing what the answer is going to be from the witness. And
No,
you
no,
think
that's not true.
Oh, okay.
Because you've deposed them, so you know pretty much what they're going to say. Now, criminal defense is a little different. In California, it's rare to get a deposition, so you know what that witness is going to say. But in civil, you've probably deposed them, and you've got a pretty good idea of what they're going to say. And if they veer from it, you can bring out the deposition transcript or the video, whatever you got, and say, "Well, today you're saying X." But when this was more fresh in your mind back when you took this deposition, you said Y.
Yeah.
So there's much more control and you're not really surprised. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't be surprised. And honestly, I think you're more surprised by what your client or one of your friendly witnesses says because you practiced and you think, oh, yeah, they know where we're going. And all of a sudden,
They do
like you
something
said,
different.
sometimes they have their own agenda and they just go off on that. You're going, wait, we talked about not going on this agenda.
Yeah. And they just do it anyway.
you did it. You did it.
Yeah.
You did it.
So
Well, that's go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, just going back to the Marine Corps, from what we see on TV, for those of us who haven't been in the service, and you watch comedies and you watch movies, the military comes off as nobody gets to ask any questions or argue. You just do as you're told, and that's that, and don't even try to think for yourself. But that's come off that way.
Yeah,
And so,
all right. I don't agree with that because
okay.
there is more courtesy, especially I think in the Marine Corps versus some other branches of the military. Marine Corps has been
Okay.
normally pretty strict about having courtesy built into how you talk to superiors and treat subordinates.
Okay,
So,
cool.
but so you can think, okay, because it's that way, then you just got to do what you're told. No, you don't think. No, you learn how to speak the speak and still get your inner point across.
Mm.
So,
See, here's another attorney thing. See, here we
See?
go.
yeah, I would say that's an attorney thing too. Sometimes I would agree.
Yeah,
Mhm.
this is interesting.
Cool.
This is really fascinating about thinking about your career. And then, so there's like strategies, emotional intelligence, don't play your hand at once,
Yeah.
but you get, so when you play poker, 5 card, 7 card, what,
I
what do
like
you
Texas Hold'em.
see?
So that's
Oh, Texas Hold'em.
yeah.
Mhm.
Huh.
Okay.
So it's
And he wins.
the best 5 cards out of 7. So it's kind of like the 7 card stud.
So when
Mhm.
you play poker, do you ever play against other attorneys? Because to me now that would be a cool game to
That's
watch.
you know what? I have, but not regularly. And I
Mhm.
really, there's a tournament every year that the consumer attorneys of San Diego puts on. And the last 2 years I've had a conflict, and I just heard
Mhm.
about it years ago. Oh, I really need to do that. I want to do it.
Cool.
So that would be fun. I would like to do that, and I hope I don't have a conflict next year because I'm going to show up. You put in $100 or something, and it's for charity. But
Mm.
then you're playing for real, so it's kind of fun. So a lot of competition.
Cool.
Oh man,
That's
that's cool
awesome.
because with attorneys, because you have to know that's that emotional intelligence and not show it on your face until you want to show something on your face. So when you think about the whole
Mm.
thing, what attorneys do, there's investigator, right? And then there's the time where you've got to play attack. There's the
Or
communication. I know the organizer, devil
organizer.
in the detail. I mean, think about
Mm.
all of this stuff. I mean, this does make a good poker game, you know?
And communication. You have to be able to talk.
Yeah, it's what you were talking about, the communication and then keeping your cool under fire. And you were talking about live ammunitions. So when you were in training and going through the service, even you weren't at battle, but they made it, you were in battle, like,
Well, all right. So it's
they
live
simulated
fire.
or, so they're
Mm.
actually shooting stuff.
Yeah,
It's
but they're
happening.
not shooting at you. It's safe. So we're not trying to hurt anyone with the live fire, but you do have live fire exercises, and sometimes you're calling in airstrikes as a forward observer. So you might be an artillery and actually calling an airstrike depending on the situation. Pretty rare, but it could happen. But then the plane comes in if you're calling in and drops ordnance out in the desert.
Wow.
That's part of it. And so if you
That's
screw
called
up,
29
the
pops.
ordinance is in the wrong place, or they call back and say, we can't do that. So you sound pretty
Mhm.
stupid. So
Oh,
you really do
wow.
have to think on your feet, be cool under fire, and live fire does heighten that. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that anyone's shooting at you. Probably no one's going to get hurt. It's not like combat, but
That's
it's as
like,
close to
okay.
combat as you can get without,
Mm.
having true risk.
So the
Yeah.
$100 pot for poker just went up to 10 grand. You can't,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, Lisa.
I
Hello.
expanded
Wow.
that. Well,
All
yeah,
right.
because that's
And
like that went live now, it's like, you don't want to play,
oh, that's
yeah.
live fire.
Well, I
Yeah, that
think
would be more of live fire.
yeah, the focus is so important and how hard, because we're all human beings and we have all these things going through our head to stay focused on a case and during a trial. I mean, there's times when I know, our industry is like, you could, be up at 3 a.m, like I will be at times. And then people go, Lisa, what the hell did you just type me? I'm like, oh, coffee. I'm focused, but you've got to,
That's a limit.
you've got to be on it when it's, because you speak legalese, right? So whatever you do, you can't have Lisa's coffee typo, right? For like, that's
Oh,
different.
yeah. All right. So So if you talk about brief writing now, it's not as time critical. I mean, you do have deadlines, but it's not like, someone's breathing over my neck. Now, all right, if you're in a law firm, you might have the partner breathing over your neck. So that you could have that too, but I don't face that. But I do have to be organized because I know there's a deadline and I know I got to get this stuff done. And you want to leave yourself time to sit and think about what you just wrote and edit if you need to. So you definitely have to be organized, and you got to keep your eye on the ball. What's the objective here, and what are the
Ooh.
steps I have to take to get to that objective? And part of it's, figuring out the timelines. The more live fire stuff that happens is in court, where there's an objection, you got to respond to the objection, or the judge says, "Hey, Mr. Heinrichs, you really need to fix this," and so you're going, shaking your head and going, "What do you mean? I thought it was going great." But okay, can we have a sidebar and talk about this? So that's more the on the cuff type of thing that you have to be in courtroom.
And you can't lose your cool on it. Like I can't,
No,
you can't
no,
be John McEnroe with his tennis,
no.
tennis
No.
racket.
Oh my gosh, no way.
No.
You'll get like contempt court and all that. Now,
Contempt
I've got to
of
ask
court.
this before we go. Have you ever watched Boston Legal? Did you watch Boston Legal when it was out on TV?
I think I did. Was that the one with who was it? Who's the guy that started?
William Shatner.
William Shatner.
And
Yeah.
Did you ever watch that?
I watched a couple episodes. I didn't follow it. You know what? The one I followed more was Ally McBeal and
I love
LA
Ally McBeal.
and LA Law. Was it LA Law?
Yeah.
LA Law, yeah.
Legal Eagles.
And-
Wasn't that also a thing? Legal Eagles years ago?
Oh, with Corbin.
Like really,
who was
Corbin
the-
Sounds
Burnson?
familiar, but I didn't follow
Yeah.
that one
That
either.
was in
So
the 80s. You
Boston
were
Legal, I
serving then.
watched once or twice, and for whatever reason, I didn't follow it. But the Ally McBeal, well, it was kind of fun.
Yeah. And I loved all the animation, that big tongue that would come out and all that kind of,
Oh, well,
That was nutty.
and Vonda Shepard's an amazing musician that did a lot of the
Oh, that's right.
McBeal
That's
music
right.
and stuff too. So that, it was fun. It was something different, just completely different. So that was a good show. But
and now there's oh gosh, what am I thinking of? They have the cops. It's what's his name? Wolf makes it. You got the cops, and then you got
Dick
the
Wolf
lawyers.
does everything. Oh,
Yeah.
Nancy,
Hudson,
Law and Order.
Law and Order.
Law and Order,
That's right.
yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
And so I've watched more of that, over the years. And again, I don't watch it religiously or regularly, but I do see some episodes, and those are pretty good. Now, I do. I go, oh, that would never happen in court. There's always where you're questioning the witness, and the lawyer just goes on and on and on. And it's like a closing statement or a closing argument, and that you can't do that. It's just you just can't do that.
See, that's the thing. Like Dr. Jackie says, half of the stuff with the
the medical
shows is full of it too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Hollywood kind of twists it to their benefit.
Yeah.
Well, you
That's
rarely
the way
get
it
a
is.
doctor that looks like a doctor off of television.
Oh, I have another really good question, and we do have to go, but I want to ask forensics. Do people have these forensic bookkeeping things that really look at people's books? Like if so like you have the forensic people come in, I can imagine them coming in with the white glove going, "I'm taking your computer, we're seizing and taking." Does that happen to businesses?
Well, okay, that might happen on a criminal subpoena where you have the FBI and their forensic team come in and say, "We get all this stuff," and they take it. And I mean, it happened to Trump not too long ago. They took his computer. Remember that? So that can happen. In civil, no, you really have to ask a judge first. And all right, so civil subpoena is a little different. I mean, the criminal, you do have to run it by a judge, but no one knows about it. You go, "Judge, sign off on this." And so now you got the warrant. I'm really talking about a warrant. And you go in and do what you want. You say, "Get out of here. We're grabbing all your stuff. We're taking everything out of your bank
running
account."
around. I got it. I got it.
I got it. In civil law, you can't do that, but you can get a subpoena that allows you to get information. But it's much more. It's not like the government coming in and putting their shoe on your neck and saying, "We're taking everything you got." No,
Yeah. Well, because it is interesting because employment law does. I mean, if there's sexual harassment, if someone was stealing money in a firm, I mean, you got all kinds of interesting things that can happen.
And you do need forensics. There are times, when you go, "Hey, we need to look at these books," and you try to get the other side to agree to it. If they won't, then you go into court and say, "Judge, we need to look at these books," and they won't give them to us, so you make them, and then you get your forensic teams to look at the books.
But by that time, they could have changed what's in the books.
It's hard to get a surprise visit in civil.
Yeah.
That's what I always think. It's like, if you already know you're in trouble, it's time to start cooking.
Well, but here's the downside of that. If you start cooking the books and the other side figures it out and they got evidence that shows it, you're screwed in court.
Yep, big
You're
time.
just a liar.
You-
And
Yeah,
they
you're
can't
gonna
believe
get
anything you
nailed.
say.
And you could go to jail.
It's
Yeah.
possible you could end up going to jail too, but just for
Mhm.
civil, it would be about money, sure.
Mhm.
Well, see,
But you're going to look
cooking
so bad. Oh my
my
God.
cooking the
Mhm.
books that I've started putting smiley faces everywhere, like little
No.
flowers in the books. I'm
No,
not.
that's
I
not.
wouldn't know what to
That's
do with
not.
it, but no. But
That's
it was
not the
fun, Ward.
same.
So next month we're talking about not sexual harassment, discrimination, right? Harassment and discrimination.
Yes.
And yes, it is Pride Month, so we're going to be talking about LGBTQ issues in the workplace and how companies could possibly do better too, right? In
Yeah, and that,
training manuals, all of that.
we talked about this before we came on, and I think that's more common to have that as an issue. I don't think companies face the issue of I'm going to discriminate against an LGBTQ person. I think in California it's pretty well known that you don't do that. I think other parts of the country probably is not aware of it, and maybe there's more.
Yeah.
California's perfect, but boy, it's well recognized out here.
Awesome. Everybody, again, bestemploymentattorneysandiego.com is Ward's website. He's on our show every fourth Wednesday. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. As always, the links to his articles, go to blendradioandtv.com or just go in the show notes, no matter if you're listening on Spotify or YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, apples, if you're eating apples, whatever you're doing. Have fun. Thank you so much, Ward. Always good.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Lori.
it was fun. Thanks for having me.